Residents of high-rise buildings across the country are travelling to Parliament today to demand that the government does more to protect people in potentially dangerous homes. In May last year, the government pledged to fully fund the removal of aluminium composite material cladding on high-rise buildings. It's the same type of cladding blamed for the spread of the Grenfell Tower fire. Campaigners want ministers to commit to funding the removal of other potentially combustible materials like timber. The Mayor of Greater Manchester, Labour's Andy Burnham, is supporting that campaign. I've been speaking to him and to 3 residents of high-risk blocks who've got concerns about the cladding on their flats. Ruth, what is your situation at the moment? Because you don't actually know whether your building is there's a problem or not.
We've had 2 reports carried out that haven't really identified anything. So we are having to go back, get new reports carried out under guidance from the government. But yeah, we've got wooden cladding HPL. We know the HPL has to be replaced.
What's the
high pressure laminate?
Okay.
The wood we're not sure about as yet, but it has to come off because we have to ascertain whether they're fire barriers, because we originally thought they were, and now we're being told that there probably isn't. So
we're looking at pictures of your building, and this is obviously a lot of work being done on it. It must be stressful with it taking time, and also it's costing someone a lot of money. What's the impact on you at the moment? It's
very stressful. We're sitting on zero value properties because we can't sell. We don't know the cost of the work as yet. As you can see from the building, there is the wooden cladding goes from ground floor all the way up, then the HPL. We don't know the cost. We're just going on estimates of the buildings, but we think it's probably going to be in excess of £20,000.
How does that make you feel?
Sick, because I don't think you can recover from that. I don't know whether the housing market is going to recover from that.
Rebecca, what's the situation with your flat?
So our issue is the wall composition behind our cladding. So behind our cladding is a timber frame and then polystyrene, which is combustible. So the concern in our building is the lack of fire barriers.
That's your building, and we're going to see the thing that you describe in a moment.
Yeah, so we're it's a brick building up until a certain height, and then there's been an extension, and that's where the cladding has come into play. So it's what they put behind the cladding to insulate the building. So
and that's a wall of polystyrene, effectively.
A wall of polystyrene. So what we are in the process of doing at the moment is finding out if there are barriers in between each apartment that would then slow down the speed at which the fire would spread, because it's a combustible product. So if there was a fire, that would go up in flames very quickly.
How stressful is this for you?
It's extremely stressful. They used my bedroom as part of the investigation, so I know that every night when I go to sleep that I'm at a real risk if a fire was to break out. And then we have a blank cheque over our heads. I don't know how much we're going to have to pay for the investigations and any rectification works. We've just not been able to move on. I wanted to move home in May last year, and I've not been able to, and I have no idea if that will ever happen.
Stuck in a place where every night you go to bed and you're frightened of fire. What happens with insurance, actually, in that context?
Well, there is stories in some of the buildings where the insurance premium has rocketed 400% of the previous cost for the premium and the excess.
Has that happened for you?
Not as of yet, because we're still waiting on the outcome of the next stage of the investigation.
Mark, what's the situation for you?
So the situation for my wife and I, we bought the flat as affordable housing for our daughter so she could live in the centre of Manchester in 2017. Since then, in 2019, as a result of the government regulations and guidance changing, then it has been found that the wooden cladding at either end of the building is combustible and therefore deemed unsafe. As a result of that, then the fire authority have inspected the building and found that they've decided to change the guidance in terms of what happens in the event of a fire, which was initially it was stay put, and now it's get out.
Andy Burnham, you're in Westminster today. What do you want the government to do?
Well, the reason why I called this lobby of Parliament today was to get those in power to hear the voices that have just been on your programme, the voices of residents trapped in a living nightmare through absolutely no fault of their own. But it feels to me as though in these 2.5 years or so since Grenfell, they've been ignored, to be honest. The government hasn't begun to face up to the full scale of the cladding crisis post Grenfell. And I don't think it can carry on in this way. They need to listen to what is being said by the residents. They need to act to get rid of this cladding immediately, to give people peace of mind, and then come to an arrangement with the property industry as to who pays. But the one thing I'm sure about is the residents mustn't be asked to pay.
The government says it's committed £600 million for fixing high-rise buildings with unsafe ACM, that's aluminium composite material cladding, in the social and private sectors. Is that not enough?
It has done that, but I'm afraid that's half a job at best. So your viewers might remember a fire in Bolton in November last year. This was a student block, and for those who looked at the pictures of the fire that night, it was horribly reminiscent of the fire at Grenfell Tower. Now, that was HPL, which has already been mentioned on the programme, not the ACM Grenfell cladding. This was high-pressure laminate. Is anybody going to say that that wasn't highly flammable? So, knowing that, and knowing that that cladding is on buildings up and down the country, and knowing that about 500,000 people are trapped in buildings that are deemed to be unsafe, my message to the government is, you are gambling with people's safety if you don't intervene and remove this cladding and make those buildings safe. It's as simple as that. They've got to end the cladding crisis, and that's the message that will be ringing out of Westminster today.
What about the owners of these blocks, though? Isn't it their responsibility? They put the cladding on in the first place.
Possibly, and I think there needs to be then, as I say, a discussion between the government and those owners or those freeholders as to where the responsibility lies. So it might be that some of the responsibility is to be borne by the property industry, but it's also the case that under successive governments, fire safety regulations have been weakened when it comes to building and planning. And that's why the UK government has responsibility here for what's going on. We'll be outside Parliament today and people will be able to see the scaffolding all over Westminster. And I think they'll conclude that, there's always money that can be found in this country for certain things, but not for others. It seems as though those in power have been able to find billions of pounds to improve the place where they work, but not to make safe the place where many millions of people live.
Well, they're in Westminster today to make their case to the government. The government's issued a statement saying resident safety remains our utmost priority and there is no excuse for building owners not ensuring that residents are safe in their homes. We will continue to support leaseholders and are reviewing options on how best to do so.